Hello, I'm Sharifa, and every couple of weeks I'll be sitting down with a trusty cup of sugar-free tea and talking to you about all the things that you wish your dentist would just tell you in plain English. It being our first episode and everything, I thought it would be really good to start at the very beginning, and the very beginning for me is dental cavities. It's something that a lot of people go to the dentist for. A lot of the population does have fillings in their teeth, and a lot of us don't understand what they are, where they come from, and what we can do to prevent them. In plain English, dental caries or a dental cavity is basically just the result of a process where the bacteria in your biofilm or your plaque create a hole in your teeth. For the purposes of today's video, we're probably going to need to go into a little bit more detail to understand what that means, because we've got two parts to that definition. We've got the actual tooth, and then we've got the biofilm or the plaque. For the purposes of today's video, I will be calling the biofilm plaque because that's what we all know it as. Now, firstly, we need to understand the structure of teeth. For the purposes of today's video, we'll be thinking of teeth as a three-layered thing. Here's a drawing that I prepared earlier, okay? I'm not sure if everybody can see that, but hopefully we can. So our teeth are made of three layers. Our first layer is this one, the white one out the top. So this is a cross section, like I've cut the tooth in half this way. So we've got this enamel layer, right? This is made of 98% mineral. It's the one that the toothpaste commercials are always talking about. It's a nice white layer. It's a protective crystal layer on top of that kind of covers all of our teeth, or at least the crowns of them. And that's going to be relevant for future videos, but we don't have to worry about it right now. Now this second layer, called the dentine here, is made of around 60 to 70% mineral, and it's the second layer of tooth. You can see that I've drawn it as being a little bit darker. It's what gives our teeth their color or their hue. And then you've got your third layer, and which is not really a layer, but we'll call it a layer for today. It's actually called the pulp. So you might hear your dentist talking about something called the nerve of the tooth. He or she or they are referring to the pulp of the tooth. And that's where your vessels, your nerves kind of all sit in there. It's where your blood supply and your nerve supply to the tooth sits. And you're thinking, okay, Sharifa, all right, that all makes sense. So why is that important? Well, it will be important in a little minute. But for a minute, we're going to just leave that there, and then we're going to go to the biofilm part of that definition that we started off with. So what is biofilm, or what is plaque? Plaque is basically a collection of bacteria that sits on the surface of your tooth. Just like we have bacteria on our skin, we have bacteria on our eyeballs, we have bacteria in our hair, on our scalps, everywhere, right? So on your teeth, naturally, there is going to be bacteria. It's a surface in your body that communicates with the outside world. There's bound to be bacteria there. So why is that important? Why do we have to know about that? Well, the bacteria exists in our mouths. We use our mouths to do something very fundamental for survival, and that thing is eat. When we eat, we digest our food, we go to the bathroom, we create feces and urine. When we eat, our bacteria also eat. They eat with us. And some of our bacteria are actually very good at producing acid. Now, do we remember when we talked about teeth being made of mineral? What dissolves mineral? Acid does. So when our bacteria produces acid, it dissolves the mineral in our teeth and creates holes. Now obviously that's very simplified, but it's really the crux of what's happening when you're getting cavities. Now some of you might be thinking, wait a minute. So if every time we eat, we get acid in our mouths, and that means that our teeth are dissolving, aren't we just all inevitably going to get cavities? Well, the answer is actually not exactly. It's a little bit more complicated than that. The thing with plaque and our teeth, that entire system, is that they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in our mouths. Our mouths are made of a whole lot of different things. There's gums in there, there's a tongue in there. There is one thing though in there that actually coats all of those things, and that's your saliva. Your saliva is made of proteins, it's made of minerals, it's made of lots of different things. And those proteins and those minerals and all those products, all those ingredients in your saliva actually work to counteract that acid. So what happens is your bacteria create acid, your saliva comes in and buffers that acid, reduces your mouth to a neutral place, and then we're all happy again. The other thing it does is, remember how I said it had mineral in it? Well, yes, as you were wondering, or you might have been wondering, is that mineral is actually available to rebuild the tooth that's been lost in that what we call an acid cycle. So the cycle of you eating, your bacteria eating with you, the acid being produced, and the dissolving of those crystals in your teeth, or the mineral in your teeth, is actually called an acid cycle. Your bacteria comes in to save the day and stops the acid cycle. So the way I like to think about it is there's biological factors, things that we can't necessarily change. So in that, there's basically, you know, the mineral content of your saliva, the quality of that saliva, things like what kind of bacteria already exists in your mouth. Those things are things that, you know, there might be a little bit of research or a lot of research into how we can modify those, but those ones for today we're not concerned with. The ones that we are concerned with are the lifestyle ones. Lifestyle factors are the ones that we as dentists tend to focus on a lot more, okay? They're the ones that in the clinic we kind of talk to you about when your dentist sits down and has a chat to you about your oral hygiene, about your diet, about smoking, about all of those things. Those are the things that we try to modify to help you or to help prevent you from getting cavities, okay? So in order to understand that whole concept, we need to go back to talking about plaque. Now, plaque is basically an ecosystem of bacteria. So we think of plaque as an ecosystem of bacteria existing on the bigger ecosystem of your actual oral cavity on the surface of your tooth, okay? Now, in those bacteria, there's kind of, for the purposes of today's video, two types of bacteria. There's highly choriogenic bacteria, which are bacteria that predispose you to getting cavities, so we'll call those the bad guys. And then we've got bacteria that's low choriogenicity, that has less, that predisposes you less to getting cavities. It doesn't protect you, but it's less involved in giving you cavities, okay? And we'll call those the good guys, or the less bad guys, okay? When plaque spends a really long time on the surface of your tooth, what ends up happening is that ecosystem starts to favor survival of the bacteria, the bad one that we just talked about. So the bad guys start to take over and the good guys start to dwindle, or the less bad guys, they start to dwindle, okay? And then we end up with an ecosystem in that bacteria, in the plaque on the surface of your tooth, that is highly acidic, that is actually predisposing you to getting cavities a lot more than it would be if it was rebuilding itself every day. So that's why, as dentists, we say brush your teeth twice a day and floss to get those bits in between your teeth that your toothbrush can't actually access. Okay, so that all makes sense. So how do sugars come into this? Why is my dentist always telling me about eating less sugar at less times throughout the day? Well, sugar kind of works in the same way that time does. So the longer that plaque stays on our teeth, the more bad bacteria we start to develop, or the more it favors bad bacteria in that ecosystem. Sugar also preferentially actually feeds the bad bacteria on your teeth that causes cavities. So the more sugar you eat, the more acid you get in your mouth, the more likely you are to get cavities in your mouth because of all the reasons that we talked about at the beginning of this video. Now, what can we do to, you know, protect your teeth? What's the next step? Basically, this is all great information, but what do I do about that? The first thing is quite straightforward. Just brush your teeth twice a day and floss. Getting rid of that plaque is great. That's all you have to do. Just mechanically get rid of that plaque. We could talk about fluoride and different toothpastes in another video, but for the purposes of today's video, just brush those teeth. On the diet front, it would be really, really, really unfair of me to say don't have any sugar ever again, because I like sugar. I know that a lot of other people like sugar. It's really tasty. It's nice and sweet. I'm not going to sit here and vilify it or vilify you for having it. Rather, what I'll say is have less sugar. And have sugar less in the forms of sticky sugar, so the kind of sticky sweets that get stuck in your teeth, because they're staying on your teeth and continuing to feed your bacteria for a long time after you've actually eaten them. The other kind of sugar that we really don't like is sugar in solution. So that's like sugar in your tea, sugar in your coffee, sugar in your soft drinks. That kind of sugar just bathes all of your teeth while you're drinking. And if you're going up and down and sipping on it, or you're sitting at your desk and you're sipping on a soft drink or a cup of tea for a long time, what you're doing is you're keeping your mouth in that acid challenge cycle for a very long time. That brings me to my next point. The frequency of eating or sugar actually really, really affects our teeth. So when we say to our patients, you can have a sweet thing, but have it after a meal. A lot of my patients look at me like, are you serious? How does that work? And my answer is this: when you eat, you're putting yourself in acid cycle anyway, so you add the sugars to that acid cycle, your saliva comes in, it buffers it, and then we're all happy again. But if we wait for our saliva to buffer our environment, to buffer itself and stop our environment from being acidic, and then come in and put in some sugar, we're giving another acid cycle, which is another opportunity to produce cavities in your teeth. So that's how that works. Now that's all well and good. I just wanted to end this video on a positive note because positive things are nice. It's not all bad news, okay? So there are some positive things that we can do, some protective things. One of those things is using a fluoridated toothpaste. I will probably be making a video about how that works. But in a nutshell, it helps to remineralize our teeth. So it helps put the mineral back in our teeth. It makes it a lot easier for us to do that. The second thing is eating foods such as cheeses and other dairy products like milk are very good for our teeth because they provide calcium and phosphate, which is what our teeth, the kind of mineral our teeth are made up of, in a way that our teeth are more likely to incorporate it back in. So it helps that remineralization process. I haven't forgotten about our vegan friends though. If you're going to have like a soy milk or an almond milk, always make sure that it is calcium fortified. It's probably going to be better for your teeth and bones that way. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope the information was useful. I hope you learnt something new today. I hope it helped you understand what your dentist was harping on about or didn't harp on about at all. And I hope it has helped curb your anxiety just a little bit about seeing the dentist. I will see you again next time with my trusty cup of tea and all of my teeth facts, and I hope you all have a lovely, lovely day.